Skyscraper, 2018, is a high-stakes action thriller starring Dwayne Johnson as Will Sawyer, a former FBI hostage rescue team leader who becomes trapped inside the world's tallest and most technologically advanced building after criminals set it on fire. The movie combines disaster survival, family drama, espionage, and explosive action into a fast-paced story about courage, sacrifice, and determination. The beginning, a tragic incident. The movie opens with a tense FBI hostage situation in Minnesota in 2004. Will Sawyer is leading a rescue operation inside a dangerous house where a hostage has been taken. Will is calm, experienced, and highly skilled, showing why he is one of the FBI's best negotiators and tactical leaders. However, the mission suddenly goes wrong. An explosive device hidden inside the building detonates unexpectedly. The explosion kills one of Will's teammates and severely injures him. Will loses part of his left leg in the blast and nearly dies. This event changes his life forever. After surviving the incident, Will leaves the FBI and begins a new chapter. Though physically wounded, he refuses to let tragedy destroy him emotionally. He learns to use a prosthetic leg and slowly rebuilds his confidence. The experience also teaches him the value of family and peace over dangerous heroics. During his recovery, he grows close to Sarah, a military doctor who helped treat him. Their relationship blossoms into love, and eventually they marry and have 2 children, Georgia and Henry. Years later, Will has transformed his life. Instead of working in dangerous law enforcement missions, he now owns a security consulting company that evaluates building safety systems. His expertise makes him highly respected in the field because he understands both criminal tactics and emergency response. The story shifts to Hong Kong, where a revolutionary skyscraper called the Pearl has just been completed. Designed by billionaire entrepreneur Zhao Longji, the Pearl is considered an engineering marvel and the tallest building in the world. The structure is far more than a normal skyscraper. It is essentially a vertical city containing luxury apartments, gardens, shopping centers, offices, recreation areas, and advanced security systems. The building uses cutting-edge technology, including a massive spherical observation deck near the top that gives the tower its name. The Pearl symbolizes human ambition and technological achievement. Zhao believes the building represents the future of civilization. However, because the tower is so advanced and valuable, security concerns are enormous. Will Sawyer is hired to inspect the building's safety systems before it officially opens to the public. Zhao trusts Will's expertise because he wants international approval that the tower is truly secure. Will arrives in Hong Kong with Sarah and their children. The family temporarily stays in the luxurious residential section of the Pearl while Will conducts his evaluation. At first, everything seems peaceful. The children are amazed by the futuristic building, and Sarah enjoys the opportunity to explore Hong Kong. But beneath the glamorous surface, danger is already brewing. The criminal conspiracy. A group of international criminals led by a ruthless man named Corrèze Bota has targeted Zhao. Corrèze is a violent mercenary involved in extortion, terrorism, and organized crime. He wants access to sensitive information hidden inside the Pearl. Years earlier, Zhao secretly collected digital evidence against powerful criminal organizations. This information is stored inside a secure vault within the skyscraper. Corrèze wants the data destroyed because it could expose him and his associates. The criminals realize that directly attacking Zhao would be difficult because the Pearl security systems are nearly impenetrable. Instead, they devise a more elaborate plan. The gang manipulates Ben Gillespie, Will's former FBI colleague and friend, into helping them. Ben initially appears trustworthy and supportive, but he has secretly betrayed Will. The criminals pressure him into stealing a tablet containing the Pearl's security access codes. Will unknowingly becomes trapped in the conspiracy when Ben arranges a meeting to obtain the security tablet from him. Betrayal and murder. Will meets Ben outside the building, expecting a routine business discussion. However, the criminals ambush them. During the confrontation, Ben reveals his betrayal. He hands over the tablet to the gang but quickly realizes the criminals never intended to let him survive. Corrèze murders Ben without hesitation. Will narrowly escapes but becomes the only witness to the crime. Unfortunately, the criminals frame him for the murder and the attack on the Pearl. Now the authorities believe Will is responsible for the unfolding chaos. The fire spreads rapidly through several lower levels of the Pearl. Because the building is so enormous, evacuating people becomes extremely difficult. Advanced systems designed to contain emergencies begin malfunctioning after being sabotaged by the criminals. The situation quickly turns catastrophic. Will's family becomes trapped high above the flames in the residential section of the tower. Communication systems fail, elevators stop working, and escape routes become blocked. Meanwhile, Hong Kong police identify Will as the primary suspect behind the attack. Officers believe he murdered Ben and caused the fire as part of a terrorist plot. Will suddenly faces impossible odds. His family is trapped inside a burning skyscraper, police are hunting him, armed criminals want him dead, the building itself is collapsing into chaos. Yet despite everything, Will refuses to abandon his family. One of the movie's most iconic moments occurs when Will attempts to re-enter the skyscraper from outside. Since police have sealed off the lower entrances, Will uses a construction crane positioned near the tower. He climbs onto the crane high above the city while carrying only minimal equipment. The sequence emphasizes Will's vulnerability. Unlike many invincible action heroes, Will struggles physically because of his prosthetic leg. Every movement is dangerous. Strong winds, massive heights, and his physical limitations make the climb terrifying. Eventually, Will performs an extraordinary leap from the crane toward the building. The jump becomes one of the movie's defining scenes because it symbolizes Will overcoming fear, pain, and seemingly impossible obstacles for the sake of his family. He barely survives the jump and crashes into the tower. Now trapped inside the burning structure, Will begin searching for Sarah and the children. While Will fights to reach them, Sarah emerges as one of the movie's strongest characters. She refuses to panic despite the terrifying situation. The fire continues spreading upward, forcing residents to flee through smoke-filled corridors. Sarah works desperately to protect Georgia and Henry from both the flames and the armed criminals moving through the building. Unlike many disaster movies where family members simply wait to be rescued, Sarah actively fights for survival. She uses intelligence, courage, and quick thinking to keep the children alive. The family encounters several terrifying situations. Explosions rock the building, floors begin collapsing, smoke threatens to suffocate them, criminals search the tower room by room. Georgia, who has asthma, becomes especially vulnerable because the smoke makes breathing difficult. Sarah must remain calm and focused while comforting her children during the disaster. These scenes add emotional weight to the film because the danger feels personal rather than purely spectacular. Zhao's secrets. As the story unfolds, Will learns more about Zhao Longji and the real reason behind the attack. Zhao admits he collected evidence against major criminal organizations as a form of protection. He feared that powerful enemies might one day target him, so he secretly stored files exposing their crimes. Corrèze wants those files destroyed before they can reach authorities. This revelation complicates the situation because Zhao's actions unintentionally endangered everyone inside the building. His secret war against criminal syndicates turned the Pearl into a battlefield. However, Zhao is not portrayed as entirely selfish. He genuinely cares about his family and the people trapped inside the tower. Like Will, he becomes willing to risk everything to stop Corrèze. Will spends much of the movie navigating dangerous sections of the burning tower while battling Corrèze men. The action scenes are designed around survival rather than military combat. Will is resourceful but not superhuman. He uses improvised tools, environmental hazards, and tactical thinking to survive. Several sequences stand out. The elevator shaft scene. Will climbs dangerous elevator shafts while flames spread around him. The vertical nature of the building creates constant tension because one mistake could mean falling hundreds of stories to his death. The mirror maze. Near the top of the Pearl is a stunning observation area featuring illusion-based mirror rooms and reflective surfaces. This futuristic section becomes the setting for an intense confrontation. The mirrors create confusion and disorientation, making it difficult to distinguish reality from reflection. The visuals symbolize how deception and hidden truths have shaped the entire story. The explosive encounters. Will repeatedly confronts armed mercenaries despite being outnumbered. Instead of relying solely on brute force, he uses strategy and the environment to gain advantages. These moments highlight his intelligence and experience as a former FBI rescue leader. The family reunion. After many close calls, Will finally reunites with Sarah and the children. The emotional reunion provides temporary relief amid the chaos. However, the danger is far from over. Corrèze captures Zhao's family and prepares for a final confrontation. He still intends to destroy the incriminating evidence and eliminate anyone who could expose him. Will realizes the only way to save everyone is to confront Corrèze directly. The climax takes place near the top of the Pearl inside the spectacular observation sphere. The final battle. The final confrontation is intense and highly dramatic. Corrèze attempts to manipulate Will psychologically, insisting that survival is impossible and the building will soon collapse completely. But Will refuses to surrender. The mirror-filled observation deck creates a tense cat-and-mouse battle. Reflections make it difficult to identify enemy positions, increasing suspense. Will eventually outsmarts Corrèze during the fight. Instead of relying on pure strength, he uses the environment strategically. Corrèze becomes trapped amid explosions and falling glass. In the end, Corrèze falls to his death from the tower. The surviving criminals are defeated, and authorities finally realize Will was innocent all along. Escaping the Pearl. Even after Corrèze is defeated, the fire still threatens to destroy the skyscraper. The remaining survivors must escape before the structure collapses. Emergency rescue teams work desperately to reach the upper floors. Zhao activates systems designed to stabilize parts of the tower long enough for evacuation. Will, Sarah, Georgia, and Henry narrowly escape the building together. Their survival represents the emotional heart of the movie, family unity overcoming overwhelming danger. The experience changes everyone involved. Zhao recognizes that obsession with power and secrecy nearly destroyed his life's greatest achievement. Will rediscovers his confidence and heroic instincts while realizing his true strength comes not from physical perfection but from determination and love for his family. Themes of the movie 1. Family above everything. At its core, Skyscraper is about family. Every major decision Will makes is driven by his desire to protect Sarah and the children. The movie repeatedly emphasizes that courage is not about fearlessness. It is about acting despite fear when loved ones are in danger. Sarah also embodies this theme through her relentless efforts to protect her children. 2. Overcoming physical limitations. Will's prosthetic leg is central to the story. Unlike many action heroes who appear invincible, Will constantly struggles with pain, balance, and mobility challenges. The movie treats his disability respectfully by showing both his vulnerability and resilience. His strength comes from persistence, intelligence, and determination rather than perfection. This makes his achievements feel more meaningful. The Pearl represents humanity's desire to build bigger, smarter, and more advanced creations. However, the movie warns that technology alone cannot guarantee safety or morality. Even the world's most advanced building becomes vulnerable because of human greed and corruption. The skyscraper itself almost feels like a character in the story, beautiful, powerful, and dangerous. Will spends much of the movie overcoming emotional scars from his past trauma. Losing his leg and teammate during the FBI explosion deeply affected him. By saving his family and confronting danger again, he finds redemption and renewed purpose. Dwayne Johnson brings emotional sincerity to the role of Will Sawyer. While the movie contains huge action sequences, Johnson ensures the character feels grounded and relatable. His portrayal balances physical toughness, emotional vulnerability, human determination. The movie also benefits from strong performances by Neve Campbell as Sarah and Chin Han as Zhao. Neve Campbell especially received praise because her character actively participates in survival rather than remaining passive. Action and visual style. Director Rawson Marshall Thurber creates a visually intense experience filled with massive fire effects, futuristic architecture, vertigo-inducing heights, explosive action, suspenseful survival sequences. The cinematography frequently emphasizes scale and danger by showing tiny human figures against enormous structures. Many scenes are designed to trigger fear of heights, especially during exterior shots of the Pearl towering above Hong Kong. The movie combines elements from classic disaster films like The Towering Inferno and action classics like Die Hard. The ending. By the end of the film, the Pearl survives despite severe damage. Authorities arrest surviving members of the criminal organization, and Zhao's secrets are exposed. Will and his family emerge stronger after enduring unimaginable danger together. The final scenes focus less on destruction and more on emotional recovery. The Sawyer family shares a quiet moment of relief after surviving the nightmare. Will's journey comes full circle. He began the movie haunted by past trauma. He feared failing the people he loved. He doubted his own physical abilities. But through courage and sacrifice, he proves that heroism is not defined by physical perfection. True strength comes from perseverance, love, and refusing to give up when everything seems lost. Final thoughts. Skyscraper, 2018, is a thrilling blend of disaster movie, family drama, and action spectacle. While the film features massive explosions and impossible stunts, its emotional core centers on a father fighting against impossible odds to save his family. The futuristic setting, intense action scenes, and emotional stakes make the movie an entertaining modern survival thriller. Its themes of resilience, redemption, and family loyalty give the spectacle genuine emotional impact. At heart, the movie asks a simple but powerful question. How far would someone go to protect the people they love? For Will Sawyer, the answer is clear. He is willing to climb a burning skyscraper touching the clouds, face impossible dangers, and risk everything for his family. Skyscraper, 2018, is a large-scale action thriller that combines disaster movie elements, family survival drama, and intense suspense. Directed, written, and produced by Rawson Marshall Thurber, the film stars Dwayne Johnson as Will Sawyer, a former FBI hostage rescue team leader who becomes trapped in a deadly conspiracy after terrorists attack the world's tallest building. The movie blends emotional family stakes with explosive action sequences, creating a modern spectacle inspired by classic disaster and action films. The film is set primarily inside an enormous futuristic skyscraper called the Pearl, located in Hong Kong. This building is not simply a tower filled with offices, it is designed as a vertical city containing apartments, shopping centers, entertainment facilities, luxury suites, and advanced security systems. The Pearl symbolizes technological ambition and human achievement, but it also becomes the setting for destruction, fear, and survival after terrorists set the building on fire. At the center of the story is Will Sawyer, played by Dwayne Johnson. Unlike many traditional action heroes, Will is a man deeply shaped by trauma and loss. Years before the events of the movie, he worked for the FBI and specialized in hostage rescue operations. During a dangerous mission, an explosion severely injured him and resulted in the loss of one of his legs. The incident changed his life forever, forcing him to leave the FBI and rebuild his identity. This background is extremely important because it defines the emotional core of the film. Will is not portrayed as an invincible superhero. Instead, he is someone who constantly struggles with physical limitations, emotional scars, and self-doubt. His prosthetic leg becomes a major part of his identity, and the movie repeatedly shows him overcoming obstacles despite the challenges he faces. This gives the action scenes greater emotional weight because every dangerous moment feels harder and more personal for him. After leaving the FBI, Will marries Sarah Sawyer, played by Neve Campbell, who was the doctor that treated him during his recovery. Together they build a loving family with their 2 children. The film emphasizes from the beginning that Will's family is the most important part of his life. Unlike many action films where relationships remain secondary, Skyscraper makes family survival the emotional driving force behind every major event. Years later, Will works as a private security consultant. His job involves evaluating the safety systems of major buildings and identifying weaknesses before criminals can exploit them. Because of his expertise, he is invited to Hong Kong by billionaire entrepreneur Zhao Longji, played by Chin Han, to inspect the security systems of the Pearl. The Pearl itself is one of the most important elements in the film. It is presented almost like a living character rather than just a location. Towering above Hong Kong, it represents modern engineering at its absolute peak. The building includes state-of-the-art technology, advanced surveillance systems, automated fire controls, and luxury residential areas high above the city. Near the top of the tower is a massive spherical structure that gives the building its name. This section contains observation decks and illusion-based rooms made with mirrors and digital effects. These futuristic interiors later become essential during the movie's climax. The Pearl symbolizes humanity's ambition to create structures bigger, smarter, and more advanced than ever before. Zhao believes the building represents the future of civilization. He takes enormous pride in what he has built, seeing it as proof that human innovation has no limits. However, The film also warns that even the greatest technological achievements remain vulnerable to corruption and greed. Despite all its advanced systems, the Pearl becomes helpless once criminals infiltrate it from within. Will arrives at the Pearl with Sarah and their children while conducting his security evaluation. At first, the atmosphere feels exciting and luxurious. The family enjoys the beauty of the building and its breathtaking views. The children are fascinated by the futuristic environment, and Sarah appreciates the opportunity to spend time together in Hong Kong. But beneath the surface, dangerous secrets already threaten everyone inside the tower. The criminal plot. The true conflict begins with a group of violent criminals led by Corrèze Bota, played by Roland Moller. Corrèze is a ruthless international terrorist and extortionist with connections to organized crime. Unlike ordinary thieves, he is intelligent, patient, and willing to kill anyone who stands in his way. Corrèze targets Zhao because Zhao secretly possesses digital files containing evidence against powerful criminal organizations. Zhao collected this information over the years as protection against enemies who might attempt to destroy him. The evidence is stored inside a secure vault hidden within the Pearl. Corrèze wants these files destroyed before they can expose him and his associates. The terrorists realize that directly attacking Zhao would be extremely difficult because the Pearl's security systems are nearly impossible to breach from the outside. Instead, they create a more strategic plan involving sabotage, deception, and manipulation. One of the most shocking twists in the story involves Ben Gillespie, Will Sawyer's former FBI colleague and trusted friend. Ben betrays Will by secretly helping the criminals gain access to crucial security information. However, Ben is not fully in control of the situation. Corrèze manipulates him and ultimately views him as disposable. The betrayal becomes one of the emotional turning points of the movie because Will genuinely trusted Ben. The revelation reminds viewers that danger does not always come from strangers. Sometimes betrayal comes from the people closest to us. The terrorists launch their attack by starting a massive fire inside the Pearl. Their goal is not simply destruction. The fire is designed to create panic, overwhelm emergency systems, and force Zhao into surrendering the digital evidence. Once the fire begins spreading through the lower levels, the situation rapidly escalates into a catastrophe. The Pearl's automated systems malfunction because the criminals sabotage them. Elevators fail, communication systems collapse, and escape routes become blocked. Thousands of feet above the ground, Will's wife and children suddenly become trapped inside a burning skyscraper. At the same time, Will is framed for the attack. After Ben is murdered by Corrèze, evidence is manipulated to make authorities believe Will is responsible for both the murder and the fire. Hong Kong police begin hunting him as the main suspect. This creates enormous tension because Will must fight on multiple fronts simultaneously. He must save his family. He must survive the terrorists. He must avoid arrest. He must clear his name. The movie constantly places him under pressure, making every decision feel urgent and dangerous. The crane jump. One of the most memorable moments in Skyscraper is the famous crane jump sequence. Because police seal off the building's lower entrances, Will cannot reach his family through normal means. Desperate to get inside, he climbs a construction crane position near the Pearl. The sequence is terrifying because the crane stands at an enormous height above the city. Wind shakes the structure, and Will's prosthetic leg makes the climb even more dangerous. Every movement requires intense concentration. The movie focuses heavily on his physical struggle. Unlike typical action heroes who move effortlessly, Will stumbles, loses balance, and experiences genuine fear. This realism makes the scene far more suspenseful. Eventually, Will performs an impossible leap from the crane toward the skyscraper. The jump becomes symbolic of the entire movie. It represents determination overcoming fear, pain, and limitation. The scene also became the center of the film's marketing campaign because it visually captured the movie's central idea, one man risking everything to save his family. Sarah Sawyer's strength. Although Dwayne Johnson is the star, Sarah Sawyer plays a critical role in the story. Rather than waiting passively for rescue, she actively fights to protect her children throughout the disaster. As the fire spreads upward, Sarah navigates smoke-filled hallways, collapsing floors, and armed criminals while keeping Georgia and Henry alive. Her calmness under pressure becomes one of the family's greatest strengths. The movie gives Sarah several heroic moments, showing that survival depends on teamwork rather than one single hero. She refuses to panic even when the situation becomes hopeless. This aspect of the film received praise because many action movies reduce family members to helpless victims. In Skyscraper, Sarah proves resourceful, intelligent, and courageous. The children also contribute emotionally to the story. Georgia suffers from asthma, making the smoke especially dangerous for her. These moments increase the emotional tension because viewers understand how vulnerable the family truly is. At its heart, Skyscraper is about survival under impossible circumstances. The fire itself acts almost like a monster, spreading unpredictably through the tower and turning every hallway into a death trap. The movie constantly emphasizes human vulnerability. Despite advanced technology and enormous wealth, everyone inside the Pearl becomes powerless once the systems fail. Fear plays a major role throughout the film. Fear of heights, fear of fire, fear of losing family, fear of failure, fear of physical weakness. Will's greatest fear is not death itself but failing to protect the people he loves. The movie repeatedly shows him confronting situations that remind him of the traumatic explosion that ended his FBI career. In many ways, the disaster forces him to relive his deepest emotional scars. However, instead of being destroyed by fear, Will learns to move through it. The story suggests that courage is not the absence of fear but the willingness to continue despite fear. The mirror maze climax. Near the end of the film, the action shifts to the observation sphere at the top of the Pearl. This futuristic section contains reflective walls, digital illusions, and mirror-filled rooms. The setting creates one of the movie's most visually striking sequences. The reflections distort reality, making it difficult for characters to identify what is real and what is illusion. This environment becomes the perfect setting for the final confrontation between Will and Corey's. Symbolically, the mirrors represent deception and hidden truths. Throughout the film, characters have hidden secrets, false identities, and conflicting motivations. The mirror maze visually reinforces these themes. The climax combines suspense, action, and psychological tension. Will must outsmart Corey's while protecting his family and preventing further destruction. Rather than defeating the villain through brute strength alone, Will uses strategy and environmental awareness. Eventually, Corey's falls to his death, ending the terrorist threat. Production and development. Behind the scenes, Skyscraper represented another major collaboration between Dwayne Johnson and director Rawson Marshall Thurber after their successful work together on Central Intelligence, 2016. The project began in 2016 when Legendary Entertainment acquired the rights to the concept after a competitive bidding process. The idea of combining a disaster movie with modern action thriller elements appealed strongly to studios because it offered large-scale spectacle and international appeal. Dwayne Johnson was immediately attached as the lead actor and producer through his company, 7 Bucks Productions. Johnson had already become one of Hollywood's most reliable action stars, known for combining physical charisma with emotional sincerity. Filming primarily took place in Vancouver, Canada, with additional location work connected to Hong Kong. The filmmakers used extensive visual effects to create the Pearl and its futuristic interiors. The design of the skyscraper was heavily inspired by modern architecture and the growing trend of super-tall buildings around the world. The filmmakers wanted the Pearl to feel believable even though it was fictional. Critical reception. When Skyscraper was released in July 2018, critics gave mixed reviews. Many praised Dwayne Johnson's performance, especially his ability to make Will Sawyer emotionally relatable despite the film's exaggerated action. The suspense sequences and visual effects also received praise. Audiences generally enjoyed the intense action scenes, the fire sequences, and the emotional focus on family survival. However, some critics argued that the story borrowed heavily from classic films like Die Hard and The Towering Inferno. Comparisons were made because all 3 films involve heroes trapped in dangerous skyscrapers while facing terrorists or catastrophic fires. Despite these criticisms, Skyscraper performed successfully at the box office, earning over $300 million worldwide against a production budget of approximately $125 million. The movie's success demonstrated the continued popularity of large-scale action thrillers centered around survival, spectacle, and emotional stakes. Skyscraper is more than a simple action movie filled with explosions and stunts. Beneath its spectacular visuals lies a story about resilience, redemption, and the power of family. Will Sawyer's journey is deeply personal. He begins the story as a man still haunted by trauma and physical loss. Although he appears strong on the surface, he carries emotional wounds from the past. The disaster at the Pearl forces him to confront those fears directly. Every dangerous moment becomes a test of his courage, intelligence, and determination. At the same time, the movie explores the dangers of unchecked ambition. The Pearl represents humanity's dream of limitless progress, but the story reminds viewers that technology alone cannot protect people from greed, violence, and corruption. The film ultimately succeeds because its emotional core remains simple and relatable, a father trying to save his family against impossible odds. Even amid giant explosions, collapsing floors, and towering flames, the story never loses sight of that central emotional truth. Skyscraper, 2018, is a fast-paced action thriller centered around survival, family, betrayal, and courage. The story follows Will Sawyer, a former Marine and FBI hostage rescue team leader whose life changes forever after a tragic mission. Years later, he becomes trapped in a deadly conspiracy involving the world's tallest building, a group of international terrorists, and a massive fire that threatens thousands of lives. The film combines emotional family drama with large-scale disaster action, placing one man against impossible odds inside a burning skyscraper towering above Hong Kong. Will Sawyer's tragic past. The story begins years before the main events of the film. Will Sawyer is introduced as a highly skilled Marine veteran who later becomes the leader of the FBI's hostage rescue team. He is experienced, brave, and respected by his colleagues for his ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. During a dangerous hostage situation, Will and his teammate Ben Gillespie enter a house where a criminal is holding people captive. The hostage taker is unstable and armed with a suicide bomb. Will attempts to negotiate and save the hostages peacefully, but the situation suddenly spirals out of control. The bomb explodes. The explosion kills the hostage taker and severely injures Will. One of the most devastating consequences is the loss of his left leg below the knee. The incident also emotionally scars him because he feels responsible for what happened. This moment becomes the foundation of Will's character throughout the movie. He is no longer simply an action hero, he is a man carrying physical and emotional trauma. Losing his leg forces him to rebuild his confidence and identity from the ground up. The film emphasizes that Will is not invincible. He struggles with pain, limitations, and memories of failure. However, he refuses to let tragedy destroy him. Over time, he adapts to using a prosthetic leg and learns how to move forward with his life. During his recovery, he meets Sarah, a doctor who helps treat him. Their relationship grows stronger, and eventually they marry and have twin children named Henry and Georgia. This family becomes the emotional center of Will's life. Everything he does afterward is motivated by his desire to protect them. A new career and a new beginning. 10 years after the explosion, Will has completely changed his profession. Instead of working dangerous rescue missions, he now operates as a private security consultant. His job is to inspect major buildings and evaluate their security systems. Because of his experience with law enforcement and hostage situations, he understands how criminals think and where vulnerabilities may exist. Will's old friend Ben Gillespie recommends him for a massive assignment in Hong Kong involving an extraordinary skyscraper called the Pearl. The Pearl is unlike any ordinary building. Standing at 3,500 feet tall with 225 floors, it is the tallest skyscraper in the world. The structure is designed as a futuristic vertical city that includes luxury apartments, entertainment areas, shopping centers, offices, gardens, and advanced technology systems. Its owner, Zhao Longji, sees the building as a symbol of progress and innovation. The Pearl represents humanity's ambition to push beyond limits and create something revolutionary. Although the tower is complete, parts of it are not yet officially open to the public. Will arrives with Sarah and their children, who stay in the luxurious residential section while he performs his security evaluation. At first, the atmosphere feels calm and exciting. The family enjoys the stunning views and futuristic environment. The children are fascinated by the enormous tower, and Sarah appreciates the opportunity for family time. But underneath the beauty of the Pearl lies danger waiting to erupt. Will meet several key individuals connected to the building. Zhao Longji, the billionaire owner Okeke, the head of security Pierce, the insurance underwriter Ben Gillespie, his former FBI colleague. Will performs extensive tests on the tower's computerized fire prevention and security systems. After careful inspection, he reports that the systems appear highly advanced and successful. However, he still needs to inspect an off-site security center connected to the Pearl before giving final approval. At this point, Zhao gives Will a special tablet device that provides complete access to the building's systems. The tablet can control surveillance, security protocols, fire systems, ventilation, and emergency procedures. This device becomes one of the most important objects in the movie because whoever controls it effectively controls the Pearl itself. Ben's betrayal. Will and Ben travel together to the off-site facility where the remaining tests will take place. Along the way, they are attacked by a supposed mugger attempting to steal the tablet. At first, the situation appears random, but Will quickly realizes something is wrong. The shocking truth is revealed: Ben has betrayed him. Ben secretly works with an international terrorist named Corey's Bota. He attacks Will in an attempt to take the tablet and hand it over to the criminals. This betrayal hits Will emotionally because Ben was not only a colleague but also an old friend. Will trusted him completely. A violent struggle follows, and during the fight, Ben is killed. Will survives, but now he is trapped in a nightmare situation. From the perspective of authorities, it appears that Will murdered Ben and stole the tablet himself. At the same time, Bota's men move forward with the next phase of their operation. Corey's Bota and his team infiltrate the Pearl and sabotage its safety systems. Using a dangerous water-reactive chemical, they deliberately start a massive fire on the 96th floor. The chemical makes the blaze nearly impossible to control. As the fire spreads, it creates a deadly barrier that cuts off the upper 130 floors from the lower sections of the building. This is a critical part of the terrorists' plan. By isolating the upper floors, they trap everyone above the fire, including Will's wife and children. Escape routes become inaccessible, elevators stop functioning, and emergency systems begin failing. The situation turns catastrophic almost immediately. Smoke floods the hallways, explosions shake the structure, and panic spreads throughout the tower. The Pearl, once a symbol of technological perfection, becomes a prison of fire and chaos. Meanwhile, Will is attacked again by Shia, one of Bota's deadly associates. Shia and her team seize the tablet after killing everyone at the off-site security center. With control of the tablet, the terrorists gain power over the Pearl systems. They disable the fire suppression mechanisms and activate the ventilation system, causing the fire to spread upward more rapidly. This transforms the building into a massive inferno. The terrorists understand that fear and destruction will pressure Zhao into surrendering what they truly want. Inside the tower, Zhao and Okeke attempt to rescue Will's family by sending security guards to their location. However, the guards are killed in a violent explosion before reaching them. For a moment, everyone believes Sarah and the children are dead. This moment becomes emotionally devastating for Will. The possibility of losing his family reawakens the trauma and helplessness he experienced years earlier during the FBI explosion. Pierce's true identity. As the disaster worsens, Zhao decides to evacuate remaining personnel by helicopter. He believes escape is the only option left. However, another shocking betrayal occurs. Pierce, the insurance underwriter, reveals himself as another accomplice of Bota. Pierce murders the evacuation team and attempts to ensure that no witnesses survive. His betrayal demonstrates how deeply the conspiracy has infiltrated the Pearl. Zhao barely escapes and retreats into his highly secure penthouse apartment, locking it down completely to prevent intrusion. Now isolated inside the building, Zhao becomes one of Bota's primary targets. At the same time, Hong Kong police launch a massive operation around the Pearl. Inspector Wu and his officers believe Will Sawyer is responsible for the attacks because evidence connects him to Ben's death and the stolen tablet. This creates another major obstacle for Will. Not only must he save his family from terrorists and fire, but he must also evade law enforcement trying to capture him. The movie constantly increases the pressure on Will from every direction. Still, he refuses to give up. One of the film's most iconic sequences occurs when Will decides to re-enter the Pearl. Since the lower floors are inaccessible, he climbs a construction crane attached to a nearby building. The scene is filled with tension because the height is terrifying, and Will's prosthetic leg makes the climb even more dangerous. The movie emphasizes his physical vulnerability. He struggles for balance, fights fear, and risks falling thousands of feet to his death. Eventually, Will makes a desperate leap from the crane into the skyscraper. The jump symbolizes his determination as a father willing to risk everything for his family. Reuniting with his family. After entering the building, Will fights his way through flames, smoke, collapsing corridors, and armed criminals. He eventually reaches Sarah and Henry, though Georgia becomes separated during the chaos. At the same time, Pierce attempts to kill the family, but Will confronts and kills him before he can succeed. These scenes reinforce the movie's central theme, family survival. Sarah also proves incredibly resourceful during the disaster. Instead of remaining helpless, she actively protects the children and helps navigate dangerous situations. Escaping through the fire barrier. Will realizes that Sarah and Henry must escape immediately. He places them inside a freefall elevator and sends them downward through the dangerous fire barrier. The sequence is extremely suspenseful because the elevator plunges rapidly toward the lower floors before emergency brakes finally activate. Sarah and Henry survive the descent and safely escape the building. Once outside, Sarah immediately informs Inspector Wu about the truth. She explains that Will is innocent and that terrorists are responsible for the attack. She also warns police that Bota's men will likely attempt escape by parachute. This moment changes the authorities' perspective and begins clearing Will's name. Georgia's capture. Although Sarah and Henry escape, Georgia remains trapped inside the building with Will. Eventually, Bota captures them. The terrorist leader uses Georgia as leverage, demanding that Will bring Zhao to him in exchange for the child's safety. This creates one of the movie's most emotional conflicts because Will is forced into an impossible situation. He must choose between protecting Zhao or saving his daughter. Naturally, he chooses his family. To reach Zhao, Will dangerously climbs along the outside of the pearl high above the city. The scene once again emphasizes fear, vulnerability, and determination. After entering the penthouse, Will confronts Zhao and finally learns the truth behind the attack. Zhao explains that during the construction of the pearl, Corey's Bota extorted millions of dollars from him. Bota threatened to cripple the construction workforce and sabotage the project unless Zhao paid him. However, Zhao secretly kept detailed records of every illegal transaction. These files contain the names, bank accounts, and criminal connections of 3 major crime syndicates connected to Bota. The records are stored securely inside the pearl. Bota's employers now fear exposure and threaten to kill him unless he retrieves or destroys the evidence. This is the real reason behind the terrorist attack. The fire, sabotage, and destruction are all part of Bota's desperate attempt to erase the files and save himself. This revelation transforms the conflict into more than a simple hostage situation. It becomes a battle involving corruption, organized crime, greed, and survival. Themes within the plot. The plot of Skyscraper explores several important themes. Family loyalty, redemption, courage under pressure, human vulnerability, the dangers of greed and corruption. Will's journey is ultimately about overcoming fear and trauma. Although he lost part of himself physically and emotionally years earlier, the crisis forces him to rediscover his courage. The movie repeatedly shows that true strength comes not from perfection but from persistence and love for others. The pearl itself symbolizes both human ambition and human weakness. Despite its advanced technology and enormous size, it becomes vulnerable because of corruption and betrayal from within. The plot of Skyscraper combines emotional storytelling with large-scale action spectacle. What begins as a routine security inspection transforms into a terrifying fight for survival inside the world's tallest building. The film keeps tension high by placing Will Sawyer against impossible odds. Deadly terrorists, massive fire, collapsing systems, betrayal, and the constant fear of losing his family. At its core, however, the story remains deeply personal. Beneath the explosions and action scenes lies the story of a wounded man trying to protect the people he loves most. That emotional foundation is what gives Skyscraper its intensity and heart. The climax of Skyscraper, 2018, represents the emotional and action-packed peak of the entire movie. After surviving fire, betrayal, explosions, and countless deadly obstacles, Will Sawyer finally reaches the most dangerous stage of his mission, rescuing his daughter Georgia from the terrorist leader Corey's Bota while saving the remaining survivors trapped inside the burning pearl. At this point in the story, everything has spiraled into chaos. The Pearl, once celebrated as the tallest and most advanced skyscraper in the world, has become a towering inferno. Entire sections of the building are engulfed in flames, emergency systems have failed, and the upper floors are isolated from the rest of the structure. Smoke pours through the hallways, glass shatters from explosions, and the enormous building feels as though it could collapse at any moment. Will has already endured unimaginable hardship to reach this stage. He has fought through terrorists, climbed dangerous exterior sections of the tower, survived impossible falls, and managed to help Sarah and Henry escape. But even after all of that, the danger is not over because Georgia remains trapped with Bota. The situation becomes deeply personal. Throughout the film, Will's primary motivation has been protecting his family. Every action he takes is driven by love, fear, and determination. George's capture by Bota forces Will into his most emotionally painful challenge because his daughter's life is now directly in the hands of a ruthless terrorist. Bota demands that Will bring Zhao Longji to him in exchange for George's safety. This demand creates intense tension because Zhao is not just an innocent businessman. Earlier in the story, viewers learn that Zhao secretly kept digital evidence of criminal activities connected to Bota and several powerful crime syndicates. These records contain names, financial transactions, and information capable of exposing dangerous international criminals. Bota's entire attack on the Pearl has been motivated by his desperation to destroy or retrieve those files before his employers eliminate him. He is cornered, fearful, and increasingly unstable. This makes him even more dangerous because he knows his survival depends on obtaining the information. Will understands the seriousness of the situation. If Bota gains control of Zhao and the files, he could escape justice entirely. Yet if Will refuses to cooperate, Georgia could die. The movie places him in a classic impossible choice scenario where every option carries enormous risk. Despite the danger, Will decides to bring Zhao to Bota. On the surface, this appears to be surrender. It seems as though Will is giving the terrorist exactly what he wants. However, Will's decision is driven not by weakness but by strategy and desperation. He knows he cannot simply attack Bota recklessly because George's life hangs in the balance. As Will and Zhao move toward the top of the Pearl, the atmosphere becomes increasingly tense. Fire continues spreading through the building, and the structure around them feels unstable and fragile. The upper sections of the skyscraper are filled with smoke, broken glass, flickering lights, and signs of destruction. The once beautiful futuristic tower now resembles a war zone. The setting itself plays a major role in creating suspense. The Pearl is so tall that the characters are suspended thousands of feet above the ground. Every broken window reveals dizzying heights below. The danger is not only the terrorists or the fire but also the terrifying possibility of falling from the building. When Will finally arrives with Zhao, Bota appears to hold all the power. He has Georgia hostage and armed men surrounding the area. The terrorist believes he has won. Throughout the movie, Bota has carefully manipulated events, sabotaged the building systems, and outsmarted authorities. He sees himself as someone always in control. However, the confrontation reveals an important truth about Bota's character. Beneath his cold confidence lies fear. He is not attacking the Pearl for pleasure alone. He is acting out of desperation because the criminal organizations behind him threaten his life if the evidence is exposed. The attack on the skyscraper is essentially his final attempt to save himself. This desperation makes him reckless. As Bota prepares to complete the exchange, Zhao unexpectedly distracts him. This moment becomes extremely important because Zhao finally stops acting like a frightened victim and chooses to fight back. Earlier in the film, Zhao was portrayed as a powerful but cautious businessman. He built the Pearl as a symbol of ambition and success, yet his secret dealings with criminals indirectly caused the disaster threatening everyone's lives. Throughout much of the movie, Zhao is trapped between fear, guilt, and survival. By distracting Bota, Zhao demonstrates courage and responsibility. He realizes that continuing to surrender to fear will only lead to more destruction. In many ways, this moment represents Zhao's redemption because he actively helps stop the man who corrupted his dream project. The distraction gives Will an opportunity to fight back. An intense battle erupts between Will, Zhao, and Bota's armed thugs. The sequence is fast, violent, and chaotic. Despite being exhausted and injured from everything he has endured, Will continues fighting with determination fueled by his need to save Georgia. One of the reasons these scenes feel exciting is because Will is not portrayed as an invincible superhero. The movie constantly reminds viewers of his physical limitations. His prosthetic leg affects his balance and movement, especially during physically demanding situations. Yet instead of weakening the character, this vulnerability makes his victories feel more meaningful. Will survives not because he is unstoppable but because he refuses to quit. During the confrontation, Bota's men are eliminated, leaving only Bota himself standing between Will and Georgia. At this stage, the terrorist becomes increasingly unstable. His carefully planned operation is collapsing around him. Police are closing in, the building is still burning, and his escape options are disappearing. Desperate for control, Bota grabs Georgia and threatens to throw her from the building. This becomes one of the most suspenseful moments in the entire movie. The enormous height of the pearl makes the threat horrifying. The audience understands that one mistake could lead to Georgia falling thousands of feet to her death. The scene also serves an emotional purpose. Throughout the film, Georgia represents innocence and vulnerability amid the chaos. She is not simply a hostage but a symbol of what Will has been fighting for since the beginning. Bota attempts to use fear as his final weapon. He believes that by threatening Georgia's life, he can force Will into submission. However, Will has spent the entire movie overcoming fear. Every challenge he has faced, from the crane jump to the burning hallways, has prepared him for this final confrontation. Instead of panicking, Will outsmarts Bota. The movie emphasizes intelligence over brute force during this moment. Will studies the environment carefully and manipulates the situation to create an opening. This reflects his background as a hostage rescue expert. He understands how dangerous people think, and he uses that knowledge against Bota. Will successfully rescues Georgia from the terrorists' grip. The rescue is emotionally powerful because it represents the fulfillment of Will's central mission. From the moment the fire began, his only goal has been protecting his family. Saving Georgia proves that despite overwhelming odds, he has not failed them. At the same time, Bota loses everything. The terrorist falls into a deadly situation involving a grenade explosion. As he plummets from the skyscraper, the movie visually reinforces the collapse of his power and control. Throughout the story, Bota believed he could manipulate everyone around him through fear and violence. His death symbolizes the destruction of that illusion. While this confrontation occurs near the top of the building, another important battle unfolds below. Inspector Wu leads a police assault on the terrorists' escape zone. Earlier in the story, Wu believed Will was responsible for the attacks on the Pearl. However, after learning the truth from Sarah, he realizes that Will has been trying to save lives all along. This shift is important because it transforms Wu from an obstacle into an ally. The police operation targets the remaining terrorists attempting to escape by parachute. Among them is Shia, one of Bota's most dangerous associates. Shia has been ruthless throughout the film, participating in murders, sabotage, and attacks against Will. However, Sarah Sawyer proves once again that she is far from helpless. During the confrontation, Sarah subdues Shia herself. This moment reinforces one of the film's strongest themes: survival through family strength and teamwork. Sarah is not merely someone waiting to be rescued. She actively fights to protect her family and stop the terrorists. The remaining thugs are killed during the assault, effectively ending the terrorist operation. Sarah then recovers the tablet controlling the Pearl systems. This device has been central to the conflict because it controls the building's fire suppression, security, and ventilation systems. Using the tablet, Sarah successfully restarts the Pearl's emergency systems. This moment changes everything. The fire suppression systems reactivate, and the blaze that has consumed the skyscraper finally begins to die. After so much destruction and chaos, the building slowly starts stabilizing. The extinguishing of the fire carries symbolic meaning as well. Throughout the movie, the flames represented fear, greed, destruction, and loss of control. Putting out the fire symbolizes the restoration of hope and order. Meanwhile, Will, Georgia, and Zhao are rescued from the upper sections of the tower by helicopter. The helicopter rescue scenes provide emotional relief after the intense climax. The survivors finally escape the burning skyscraper that has trapped them for so long. When the Sawyer family reunites, the emotional impact becomes clear. They have survived impossible circumstances together. The reunion is not overly dramatic or sentimental, but it feels meaningful because viewers understand everything the family endured to reach that moment. For Will especially, the reunion represents personal redemption. Years earlier, he lost part of himself during the FBI explosion and carried emotional guilt ever since. Throughout Skyscraper, he constantly fears failing the people he loves. Saving his family allows him to overcome those fears and rediscover confidence in himself. Inspector Wu finally meets Will face-to-face after previously pursuing him as a suspect. Wu acknowledges Will's courage and heroism, recognizing that he was never the villain but the man trying to stop the disaster from the beginning. This moment resolves the misunderstanding between them and restores Will's reputation. The film ends with Zhao looking at the enormous damage done to the Pearl. Huge sections of the skyscraper have been burned and destroyed, with fire damage extending from the 96th floor all the way to the roof. For Zhao, this sight is deeply emotional. The Pearl was his greatest achievement, a symbol of innovation and ambition. Seeing it damaged is painful because it represents both his dream and the consequences of the dangerous secrets connected to its construction. Yet Zhao refuses to abandon the building. Instead, he announces his intention to rebuild the Pearl. This final statement carries important symbolic meaning. The decision to rebuild reflects resilience, hope, and determination. Despite tragedy and destruction, life continues. Human beings rebuild after disaster rather than surrendering to fear. The ending of Skyscraper ultimately focuses on survival, redemption, and family unity. Although the movie contains massive action scenes and spectacular destruction, its emotional core remains centered on one man's determination to save the people he loves. Will Sawyer's journey ends not with personal glory but with something more meaningful, his family alive and together. The cast of Skyscraper plays a major role in bringing the movie's intense action, emotional family drama, and suspenseful survival story to life. While the film is filled with explosions, fire, and large-scale action scenes, its emotional strength comes from the characters and the performances behind them. Each major character represents a different aspect of the story, including courage, greed, loyalty, fear, redemption, corruption, and family devotion. The actors help transform Skyscraper from a simple disaster movie into a more emotionally grounded action thriller. Every major character contributes to the tension and emotional stakes inside the world's tallest building, the Pearl. Dwayne Johnson as Will Sawyer. Dwayne Johnson plays the film's main protagonist, Will Sawyer. Will is a former United States Marine and former FBI hostage rescue team leader who now works as a private security consultant. He is also an amputee who lost his left leg below the knee during a failed hostage rescue mission years before the main events of the story. Will Sawyer is the emotional center of the film. Although Skyscraper contains many spectacular action scenes, the story ultimately revolves around his struggle to protect his family while overcoming personal trauma and physical limitations. Dwayne Johnson portrays Will as both physically strong and emotionally vulnerable. Unlike many action heroes who appear invincible, Will constantly struggles with pain, fear, exhaustion, and self-doubt. His prosthetic leg is not treated as a minor detail but as an essential part of his character. The film repeatedly shows how his disability affects his movement, balance, and ability to survive dangerous situations. This makes Will more relatable and human. Every action scene feels more intense because viewers understand that he is not superhuman. He suffers injuries, struggles during fights, and risks falling while climbing the enormous skyscraper. At the same time, Will's greatest strength comes from his determination. He refuses to surrender even when facing impossible odds. His love for his wife Sarah and their children drives him forward throughout the movie. Dwayne Johnson balances emotional sincerity with physical intensity. He brings warmth to the family scenes and urgency to the action scenes. His performance allows audiences to believe that Will is both a caring father and a capable rescue expert. Will's character arc is deeply connected to redemption. After losing his leg during the FBI explosion years earlier, he carries emotional guilt and fear of failure. The disaster at the Pearl forces him to confront those fears directly. By the end of the movie, he rediscovers confidence in himself and proves that true strength is about persistence rather than physical perfection. Neve Campbell as Sarah Sawyer. Neve Campbell plays Sarah Sawyer, Will's wife and a former United States Navy doctor. Sarah is one of the movie's strongest and most important supporting characters. In many action movies, the hero's family exists mainly to be rescued. However, Skyscraper gives Sarah a far more active role. As a former military doctor, Sarah is intelligent, calm under pressure, and capable of making difficult decisions during emergencies. When the fire traps the family inside the Pearl, she immediately focuses on survival rather than panic. Throughout the film, Sarah protects her children, navigates dangerous corridors, avoids terrorists, and fights to keep the family alive. She repeatedly demonstrates courage and quick thinking during life-threatening situations. Neve Campbell's performance adds emotional realism to the movie. Sarah is not portrayed as a perfect fearless hero. She experiences fear, stress, and emotional pain, but she continues fighting because her children depend on her. Her relationship with Will is also important to the film's emotional foundation. Their marriage feels believable because it is built on mutual trust and respect. They support one another during the disaster rather than constantly arguing or blaming each other. One of Sarah's most significant moments occurs near the climax when she helps stop the terrorists and recovers the tablet controlling the Pearl systems. By restarting the building's emergency systems, she helps extinguish the fire and save countless lives. Sarah's character reinforces one of the film's key themes: survival depends on teamwork and family strength. Chin Han as Zhao Longji. Chin Han portrays Zhao Longji, the wealthy Chinese businessman who finances and owns the Pearl. Zhao is a fascinating character because he represents both ambition and moral compromise. He created the Pearl as a symbol of innovation and human achievement. The Skyscraper is intended to demonstrate technological progress and redefine modern architecture. At first, Zhao appears confident, calm, and highly intelligent. He takes enormous pride in his building and genuinely believes it represents the future. However, as the story unfolds, viewers learn that Zhao has dangerous secrets. During the construction of the Pearl, he became involved with criminal organizations led by Corey's Bota. Bota extorted money from him by threatening the project and its workers. Instead of reporting the criminals immediately, Zhao secretly documented the illegal transactions and stored evidence against them as protection. This decision indirectly causes the disaster because Bota later attacks the Pearl to recover or destroy the evidence. Chin Han portrays Zhao as a complex figure rather than a simple hero or villain. He is not evil, but his secrecy and fear contribute to the crisis. Throughout the movie, Zhao struggles with guilt, responsibility, and survival. By the climax, Zhao begins redeeming himself by helping Will fight back against Bota. He ultimately chooses courage over fear and accepts responsibility for his role in the disaster. The character represents the dangers of ambition mixed with compromise. Although Zhao dreamed of building something extraordinary, his hidden dealings nearly destroyed everything he created. Roland Moller as Corey's Bota. Roland Moller plays Corey's Bota, the film's main antagonist. Bota is an international terrorist and criminal kingpin who orchestrates the attack on the Pearl. He is ruthless, intelligent, manipulative, and extremely dangerous. Unlike villains motivated purely by destruction, Bota acts out of desperation and greed. He previously extorted millions of dollars from Zhao during the construction of the Pearl. However, Zhao secretly recorded evidence of these dealings, putting Bota at risk. Now threatened by the criminal syndicates connected to him, Bota launches the attack to erase the evidence and save himself. Roland Moller gives Bota a cold and intimidating presence. He speaks calmly, rarely loses emotional control, and constantly manipulates others. Throughout the movie, he remains several steps ahead of many characters, successfully infiltrating the building and sabotaging its systems. Bota also represents the corrupting power of greed and fear. Although he appears powerful, much of his behavior is driven by panic. He knows his criminal employers will kill him if the evidence is exposed. As the story progresses, Bota becomes increasingly unstable because his carefully planned operation begins collapsing around him. His desperation grows stronger, making him more violent and reckless. The final confrontation between Will and Bota is not just physical but symbolic. It represents courage confronting fear and family loyalty confronting selfish survival. Noah Taylor as Mr. Pierce. Noah Taylor portrays Mr. Pierce, the insurance executive connected to the Pearl. Initially, Pierce appears professional and calm, serving as part of the business team overseeing the building. However, the movie later reveals that he secretly works with Bota. Pierce's betrayal adds another layer of tension because it shows how deeply corruption has spread throughout the operation. Unlike Bota, who openly embraces violence, Pierce hides behind professionalism and corporate behavior. He represents greed disguised as respectability. His role becomes especially dangerous when he murders evacuation personnel and attempts to eliminate survivors. He is cold, calculating, and willing to sacrifice innocent lives for money and self-preservation. Noah Taylor's performance makes Pierce unsettling because he appears ordinary on the surface while hiding ruthless intentions underneath. Byron Mann plays Inspector Wu, the leader of the Hong Kong police force response team. Wu initially believes Will Sawyer is responsible for the attacks on the Pearl. From his perspective, the evidence points directly toward Will. Ben Gillespie is dead, the security tablet is missing, and Will appears connected to the chaos surrounding the building. As a result, Wu spends much of the movie trying to capture Will. However, Inspector Wu is not portrayed as unfair or corrupt. He is a disciplined officer trying to understand a confusing and dangerous situation. Once Sarah explains the truth, Wu quickly adapts and begins helping stop the terrorists. Byron Mann gives Wu authority, intelligence, and professionalism. His character represents law enforcement attempting to restore order during overwhelming chaos. By the end of the movie, Wu recognizes Will's heroism and finally acknowledges that he was trying to save lives all along. Hannah Quinlivan as Shia. Hannah Quinlivan plays Shia, one of Bota's most dangerous operatives. Shia is skilled, ruthless, and highly loyal to Bota. She participates in the attack on the off-site security center, helps steal the tablet, and assists in sabotaging the Pearl systems. She serves as one of the film's primary physical threats to Will and his family. Unlike some villains who rely only on weapons, Shia is highly capable in combat and strategy. She constantly pressures the heroes and creates additional danger during the crisis. Her role also helps emphasize the organized nature of Bota's operation. The attack on the Pearl is not random chaos but a carefully planned mission involving trained criminals. Shia's final confrontation with Sarah becomes especially satisfying because it allows Sarah to actively participate in defeating the terrorists rather than simply escaping danger. Pablo Schreiber as Ben Gillespie. Pablo Schreiber portrays Ben Gillespie, Will Sawyer's former FBI colleague and trusted friend. Ben's betrayal becomes one of the movie's emotional turning points. At first, Ben appears loyal and supportive. He recommends Will for the Pearl security assignment and behaves like a reliable old friend. However, he secretly works for Bota and attempts to steal the security tablet. Ben's betrayal hurts Will deeply because of their shared history. It reminds viewers that trust can be manipulated and that danger sometimes comes from familiar faces rather than strangers. Pablo Schreiber portrays Ben as conflicted and desperate rather than purely evil. Although he betrays Will, he also appears trapped in a dangerous situation controlled by Bota. His death early in the movie triggers the chain of events that frame Will and intensify the crisis. McKenna Roberts as Georgia Sawyer. McKenna Roberts plays Georgia Sawyer, Will and Sarah's daughter. Georgia represents innocence and emotional vulnerability throughout the film. She becomes one of the primary reasons Will risks his life repeatedly inside the burning skyscraper. Despite being a child, Georgia displays courage during terrifying situations. She trusts her parents and tries to remain brave even while surrounded by fire and violence. Her capture by Bota near the climax raises the emotional stakes significantly because viewers understand how much she means to Will. Georgia symbolizes the emotional heart of the family. Noah Cottrell as Henry Sawyer. Noah Cottrell portrays Henry Sawyer, Georgia's twin brother. Henry experiences the disaster alongside his family and contributes to the emotional realism of the movie. Like Georgia, he represents innocence caught in a situation far beyond his control. Henry's relationship with his parents helps reinforce the movie's family-centered themes. The children are not merely background characters, they are the reason the story matters emotionally. Adrian Holmes as a Johnny Okeke. Adrian Holmes plays a Johnny Okeke, Zhao's head of security and personal bodyguard. Okeke is loyal, disciplined, and committed to protecting Zhao and the people inside the Pearl. Unlike some of the corrupt individuals surrounding the building, Okeke genuinely tries to stop the disaster and rescue survivors. He represents professionalism and loyalty amid betrayal and chaos. Matt O'Leary as the skinny hacker. Matt O'Leary portrays Boat as hacker, often referred to as the skinny hacker. This character is responsible for helping manipulate the Pearl's computerized systems. He represents the technological side of the terrorist operation. The hacker's actions demonstrate how modern technology can become dangerous when placed in the wrong hands. Tu Ma as Chief Sheng. Tu Ma plays Chief Sheng of the Hong Kong Fire Services. Chief Sheng represents emergency responders attempting to control an impossible disaster. Although the fire spreads rapidly through the Pearl, Sheng and his team continue risking their lives to contain the situation. His role emphasizes the scale of the catastrophe and the difficulty of fighting such a massive fire. Kevin Rankin as Ray. Kevin Rankin portrays Ray, the hostage-taker from the film's opening sequence. Although his screen time is limited, Ray's actions permanently change Will Sawyer's life. The explosion he triggers causes Will's injury and emotional trauma, setting the foundation for the entire story. Without Ray's actions, Will's journey throughout Skyscraper would never exist. Final thoughts. The cast of Skyscraper works together to create a movie that balances emotional storytelling with large-scale action spectacle. Dwayne Johnson anchors the film with a performance that combines vulnerability and determination, while Neve Campbell provides emotional strength and resilience. The supporting cast adds tension, complexity, and personality to the story, helping transform the Pearl into a believable environment filled with fear, ambition, betrayal, and survival. Each character serves a specific purpose within the movie's larger themes. Will represents courage and redemption, Sarah represents family strength, Zhao represents ambition and regret, Bota represents greed and desperation, and the supporting characters reinforce the tension surrounding survival inside the burning skyscraper. Together, the cast helps make Skyscraper more than just an action film about explosions and danger. At its core, it becomes a story about family, resilience, and the determination to survive against impossible odds. The development and production of Skyscraper, 2018, reveal how Hollywood attempted to create a modern action spectacle that combined realistic architectural imagination, international filmmaking ambitions, and star-driven entertainment. The movie was not simply designed as another disaster action film. Instead, it was conceived as a massive cinematic event centered around a futuristic skyscraper so advanced and visually impressive that it would become a character of its own within the story. Every stage of development, from the earliest bidding war to the architectural consultation behind the fictional tower, demonstrates how carefully the filmmakers tried to blend realism, mythology, and large-scale action into a globally appealing blockbuster. The project officially began gaining attention on May 26, 2016, when Legendary Entertainment won a competitive bidding war for the rights to the film. A bidding war in Hollywood happens when multiple studios or production companies believe a project has strong commercial potential and compete aggressively to secure it. This immediately showed that Skyscraper was considered a valuable and promising concept even before filming began. Several factors contributed to this excitement. First, the movie starred Dwayne Johnson, one of the most bankable and recognizable actors in the world. By 2016, Johnson had already transformed himself from a professional wrestler into one of Hollywood's most successful action stars. Films like Fast and Furious, San Andreas, and Central Intelligence had proven his ability to attract global audiences. Studios recognized that attaching his name to a high-concept action thriller dramatically increased the project's marketability. Another major factor was the movie's setting and concept. The film was described as a Chinese-set action-adventure involving an enormous futuristic skyscraper. This was particularly significant because Hollywood was increasingly focusing on international markets, especially China, which had become one of the largest movie markets in the world. Studios understood that creating stories connected to Chinese locations or themes could strengthen international box office performance. The decision to place the story in Asia was not accidental. It reflected a larger industry strategy in which Hollywood productions attempted to appeal to both Western and Eastern audiences simultaneously. Rawson Marshall Thurber became one of the key creative forces behind the film. He served as the scriptwriter, director, and producer. This gave him substantial influence over the project's tone and direction. Thurber had previously worked with Dwayne Johnson on Central Intelligence, and the success of that partnership likely increased studio confidence in their collaboration. Thurber's involvement in multiple roles also meant the movie could maintain a consistent creative vision throughout development and production. Rather than having separate individuals handling the writing and directing processes, Thurber could shape the narrative from conception to execution. Beau Flynn also joined the project as producer through Flynn Picture Company, while Dwayne Johnson's 7 Bucks Productions became heavily involved. 7 Bucks Productions had already started building a reputation for producing commercially successful entertainment centered around Johnson's star power. The company played a major role in shaping Johnson's modern Hollywood image by selecting projects that balanced action, emotion, humor, and large-scale spectacle. Their involvement in Skyscraper ensured that the movie would focus strongly on Johnson's strengths as a performer. Universal Pictures secured distribution rights, giving the film access to one of Hollywood's largest marketing and release systems. Distribution is one of the most important parts of blockbuster filmmaking because even an expensive movie can fail without proper promotion and global release planning. Universal had extensive experience launching large action films worldwide, which helped position Skyscraper as a major summer blockbuster. As development progressed, the casting process became increasingly important. On June 22, 2017, reports revealed that Neve Campbell had signed on to portray the wife of Johnson's character. This role was essential because the emotional core of Skyscraper revolves around family survival rather than pure action alone. The story centers on Will Sawyer, a former FBI hostage rescue team leader and war veteran, who must save his family after they become trapped inside the world's tallest and most technologically advanced building during a catastrophic attack. Neve Campbell's casting added emotional credibility to the film. Campbell was already known for her performances in dramatic and suspenseful roles, particularly in the Scream franchise. Her presence helped balance the explosive action with grounded emotional tension. The filmmakers clearly wanted the family dynamic to feel believable because the audience needed to care about the survival of the characters inside the tower. Interestingly, several other actresses were reportedly considered for the role, including Maggie Q, Rachel Bilson, Jaime Alexander, and Mira Sorvino. Each actress would have brought a different style and energy to the character. Maggie Q, for example, was already associated with action-oriented performances and could have emphasized a more physically intense interpretation. Jaime Alexander also had strong action credentials. Rachel Bilson may have created a softer or more emotionally intimate portrayal, while Mira Sorvino could have added dramatic maturity. Ultimately, Neve Campbell's combination of emotional depth and quiet strength fit the filmmaker's vision best. Additional casting choices further expanded the movie's international and dramatic appeal. Chin Han joined the cast in July 2017. His role was especially significant because he portrayed Zhao Longji, the visionary billionaire behind the construction of the Pearl, the fictional skyscraper at the center of the film. Chin Han brought sophistication and authority to the role, helping establish the building not just as a structure but as a symbol of ambition, innovation, and human achievement. Pablo Schreiber also joined the cast, contributing intensity and menace to the movie's antagonist side. Schreiber had already built a reputation for playing physically imposing and psychologically complex characters. His casting reinforced the movie's darker thriller elements. In August 2017, even more actors joined the project, including Byron Mann, Hannah Quinn-Livan, Noah Taylor, and Roland Moller. These additions reflected the filmmaker's attempt to create an international ensemble cast. Because the story takes place in Hong Kong and centers on a globally significant architectural marvel, it made sense to include actors from different cultural and cinematic backgrounds. This international casting strategy also increased the film's worldwide appeal. However, one of the most fascinating aspects of Skyscraper's production involved the design of the fictional tower itself. The building, known as the Pearl, was not created randomly. The filmmakers wanted the structure to feel realistic enough that audiences could believe it might actually exist in the future. To accomplish this, the production consulted Adrian Smith plus Gordon Gill Architecture, one of the world's leading architectural firms specializing in super-tall skyscrapers. Adrian Smith is especially famous for designing some of the tallest and most ambitious buildings ever conceived, including the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, currently the tallest building in the world. Bringing such experts into the project demonstrated the filmmaker's commitment to realism. Rather than inventing a purely fantasy structure, they wanted the Pearl to reflect real engineering principles and architectural possibilities. Adrian Smith explained that the producers wanted the tower to be based on real possibilities. This statement reveals an important creative philosophy behind the movie. While Skyscraper contains exaggerated action sequences and cinematic spectacle, the filmmakers wanted audiences to feel that the building itself could realistically exist within the near future. This approach made the danger and suspense feel more believable. The architects advised the production team on many real-world issues affecting extremely tall buildings. One of these involved wind behavior. As skyscrapers become taller, wind forces become a major engineering challenge. Tall structures can sway significantly during storms or high winds. Engineers must carefully design buildings to remain stable while still allowing controlled movement. This concept became especially relevant in the film because many action scenes occur at dangerous heights where environmental forces matter. The architects also discussed tower movement. Super tall buildings are never completely motionless. They subtly shift and flex due to wind and structural pressure. Incorporating these realities into the movie helped create a more authentic atmosphere. The Pearl was imagined as a technological masterpiece capable of handling these challenges through advanced engineering systems. Elevator systems represented another important topic during production consultation. In extremely tall skyscrapers, elevators become incredibly complicated because transporting people efficiently across hundreds of floors requires sophisticated planning. Traditional elevator systems become less practical as height increases. Modern megatall structures use advanced zoning systems and high-speed elevators to move people effectively. Since Skyscraper revolves around a building containing thousands of occupants, realistic transportation systems were essential to the world building. The architects also explored the concept of super-tall towers functioning as complete cities within themselves. This idea was central to the identity of the Pearl. Rather than being just an office building, the tower was envisioned as a self-contained urban environment with residences, entertainment areas, restaurants, parks, technological systems, and luxury facilities. This reflected real architectural trends in which modern skyscrapers increasingly combine multiple aspects of city life into vertical spaces. The design inspiration for the Pearl carried strong symbolic meaning as well. The architectural rendering drew heavily from Chinese mythology and aesthetics. The production team researched local myths and legends before settling on imagery connected to a twisting dragon holding a pearl in its mouth. In Chinese culture, dragons are often symbols of power, wisdom, strength, and prosperity. Pearls, meanwhile, can symbolize enlightenment, spiritual energy, or priceless treasure. By combining these symbols into the building's design, the filmmakers transformed the tower into more than a futuristic structure. The Pearl became a visual representation of ambition, national pride, technological progress, and mythical grandeur. The twisting shape of the building reinforced this dragon imagery, giving the structure a flowing, almost living appearance. Production designer Jim Bissell and his team reportedly studied local Chinese myths to inspire the final design. This reflects how modern blockbuster filmmaking increasingly incorporates cultural symbolism into visual storytelling. Instead of creating a generic futuristic tower, the filmmakers wanted the building to feel connected to its fictional Hong Kong setting and broader Chinese cultural influences. The decision to place the tower where the real-life Hong Kong Cultural Center exists added another layer of realism. By anchoring the fictional structure within an actual urban location, the filmmakers helped audiences imagine how such a skyscraper could fit into the real world. Hong Kong itself is famous for its dense skyline and towering architecture, making it an ideal setting for a movie focused on vertical scale and urban spectacle. The Pearl ultimately became the centerpiece of the entire film. Nearly every aspect of the movie's suspense, action, and emotional drama depends on the building's design and functionality. Unlike many action movies where settings simply serve as backdrops, the Pearl actively shapes the narrative. Its immense height, advanced technology, and structural complexity create the conditions for danger, survival, and heroism. The production's attention to architectural detail helped distinguish Skyscraper from more generic disaster films. The filmmakers wanted viewers to believe that humanity could genuinely build such a structure in the near future. This realism made the film's action sequences feel more immersive because audiences could imagine themselves inside the tower. At the same time, the movie reflected contemporary anxieties about technology, urbanization, and human ambition. The Pearl represented both the incredible possibilities and terrifying risks of pushing architectural innovation to extreme levels. It symbolized humanity's desire to conquer height, space, and technological limitation while also revealing how fragile such achievements can become during crisis. Overall, the development and production of Skyscraper demonstrate how modern blockbuster filmmaking combines global marketing strategies, architectural realism, star power, cultural symbolism, and technological imagination. From the competitive bidding war to the involvement of real-world skyscraper experts, every stage of production reflected a desire to create a spectacle that felt larger than life yet still grounded in believable possibilities. The result was a film that transformed a fictional building into one of the most memorable elements of the entire cinematic experience. The filming and visual effects production of Skyscraper, 2018, played a massive role in transforming the movie from a simple action concept into a large-scale cinematic spectacle. While the story focused on a former FBI hostage rescue leader trying to save his family from a burning supertower, the true challenge behind the scenes was making the fictional world feel believable, immersive, and visually overwhelming. The filmmakers needed audiences to believe that the Pearl, the gigantic skyscraper at the center of the story, truly existed. To achieve this, the production combined practical filming locations, carefully designed sets, advanced computer-generated imagery, and the work of several world-class visual effects studios. Principal photography officially began on August 14, 2017, in Vancouver, British Columbia. Vancouver has become one of the most important filmmaking locations in North America and is often referred to as Hollywood North. Many blockbuster productions choose Vancouver because of its modern cityscape, skilled film crews, advanced production facilities, and tax incentives that make large-scale filmmaking more financially manageable. For Skyscraper, Vancouver offered an ideal environment because the city contains a mixture of sleek urban architecture, tall glass towers, modern streets, and cinematic weather conditions that could convincingly support the movie's futuristic atmosphere. The decision to film in Vancouver also provided practical advantages for a movie requiring extensive action sequences and complex production design. Modern action films involve enormous logistical demands. Streets may need to be closed, buildings modified, sets constructed, explosions coordinated, and dangerous stunt work performed safely. Vancouver's film industry infrastructure allowed the production team to manage these challenges efficiently. The city already had a strong reputation for hosting major productions involving visual effects-heavy storytelling, making it easier to assemble experienced crews capable of handling the movie's ambitious technical requirements. Although Skyscraper takes place primarily in Hong Kong, much of the filming occurred in Vancouver because the city could replicate aspects of an international futuristic metropolis. Through careful cinematography, set dressing, digital enhancements, and post-production editing, filmmakers could transform Vancouver into a convincing stand-in for the movie's fictionalized version of Hong Kong. This is common in blockbuster filmmaking because shooting entirely on location in crowded international cities can be extremely expensive and complicated. The production likely used a combination of practical sets and real urban locations to create the environments seen throughout the film. Large portions of the movie occur inside the Pearl, the fictional megatall skyscraper. Since no real building like the Pearl actually exists, the filmmakers had to create many interior spaces from scratch. Sets were designed to represent luxurious apartments, futuristic observation decks, advanced security rooms, elevator systems, maintenance corridors, and massive glass-covered spaces suspended at terrifying heights. One of the most visually memorable parts of the movie is the enormous spherical observation area near the top of the tower. This glowing structure becomes one of the movie's central visual icons. To create scenes within these environments, the production likely combined partial physical sets with green screens and digital extensions. Actors would perform on carefully constructed platforms and practical environments while the surrounding cityscapes, heights, and dangerous exterior views were later added using computer-generated imagery. The filmmakers also needed to create believable action within extremely hazardous environments. Since the story revolves around fire, explosions, collapsing structures, broken glass, and high-altitude danger, safety during filming became critically important. Dwayne Johnson performed many physically demanding scenes involving climbing, jumping, fighting, and balancing at dangerous heights. However, much of this danger had to be carefully simulated using stunt coordination, harness systems, wire rigs, and visual effects integration. Action scenes in movies like Skyscraper often involve actors performing in controlled studio conditions, while digital artists later add backgrounds, destruction, and environmental effects. For example, a scene showing a character hanging hundreds of stories above the ground might actually be filmed on a safe platform only a few feet off the ground inside a soundstage. The illusion of height is then created through visual effects, camera angles, lighting, and digital environments. Additional filming took place on location in Hong Kong itself, including at the Hong Kong Cultural Center. This was extremely important because it allowed the movie to capture authentic visual details from the city. Hong Kong is famous for its dense skyline, neon-lit atmosphere, harbor views, and towering architecture. These elements contributed heavily to the movie's futuristic tone and global scale. Shooting on location helped ground the film in reality. Even though the Pearl is fictional, placing it within recognizable Hong Kong surroundings made the building feel more believable. Audiences familiar with the city could identify certain visual landmarks, while international viewers experienced Hong Kong's urban intensity as part of the movie's atmosphere. The Hong Kong Cultural Center was especially significant because the fictional Pearl Tower is imagined as occupying the same general location. By filming around the actual site, the production connected the imaginary skyscraper to a real geographical space. This blending of fiction and reality strengthened the illusion that the Pearl could genuinely exist within Hong Kong's skyline. Filming in Hong Kong also added cultural texture and visual authenticity. Hollywood productions sometimes struggle when portraying international locations because they rely too heavily on studio recreations or stereotypes. By capturing real footage of the city, the filmmakers introduced genuine architectural patterns, lighting conditions, traffic movement, harbor scenery, and urban energy into the movie. However, practical filming alone could never fully realize the vision of Skyscraper. The movie depended heavily on visual effects to bring the Pearl and its dangerous environments to life. During post-production, several major visual effects companies collaborated on the project, including Moving Picture Company, Method Studios, Image Engine, and Industrial Light and Magic, commonly known as ILM. These studios are among the most respected visual effects companies in the film industry. Their involvement demonstrates how technically ambitious Skyscraper truly was. Modern blockbuster filmmaking often requires hundreds or even thousands of visual effects shots. Each shot may involve digital environments, fire simulations, explosions, weather effects, lighting adjustments, or entirely computer-generated structures. The visual effects teams faced an enormous challenge because the Pearl itself did not exist. Every exterior shot of the tower had to be digitally created. Artists needed to design the building in incredible detail, ensuring it looked realistic from every angle, both during daytime and nighttime scenes. The Pearl was not simply a static object. It needed to function as a believable architectural structure with lighting systems, windows, reflections, interior activity, and environmental interaction. Digital artists carefully constructed the tower so it would respond naturally to weather, sunlight, smoke, and destruction. Every reflection on the glass surfaces and every movement of fire across the building required extensive technical work. One of the most difficult aspects of the visual effects involved simulating fire realistically. Fire is extremely complicated in digital filmmaking because it behaves unpredictably and interacts dynamically with air, surfaces, and lighting. Since much of Skyscraper revolves around a massive blaze consuming sections of the Pearl, the visual effects artists needed to create convincing flames, smoke, sparks, heat distortion, and structural damage. The fire could not simply look dramatic, it also needed to evolve naturally throughout the film. Different materials burn differently, smoke spreads in specific ways, and flames react to airflow within large structures. Artists used advanced simulation software to recreate these behaviors realistically. The fire had to appear dangerous enough to create suspense while still allowing audiences to visually follow the action sequences occurring within the chaos. Smoke simulation became equally important because smoke often creates the true sense of danger during fires. Thick smoke affects visibility, lighting, atmosphere, and tension. The visual effects teams carefully integrated smoke into scenes so characters appeared genuinely trapped inside a burning environment. Another enormous challenge involved height perception. Much of the movie's suspense depends on the audience feeling terrified by the extreme elevation of the Pearl. The filmmakers constantly emphasize how far above the ground the characters are positioned. Visual effects artists created vast digital cityscapes below the tower to reinforce this scale. These city environments needed to feel alive and detailed. Streets, vehicles, harbor lights, neighboring buildings, and atmospheric haze all contributed to the illusion of enormous height. Small details such as moving traffic or distant lights helped audiences subconsciously understand the tower's immense scale. Industrial Light and Magic played a particularly important role because the company has decades of experience creating groundbreaking visual effects for major films. Founded by George Lucas during the production of Star Wars, ILM became one of the most influential effects companies in cinema history. Their involvement in Skyscraper brought advanced expertise in large-scale destruction, digital environments, and cinematic realism. The visual effects supervisors, including Craig Hammack, Jose Burgos, Bernard Kimbarker, and Jason Billington, coordinated the enormous technical effort required to complete the movie. Visual effects supervision involves managing teams of artists, ensuring consistency between shots, solving technical problems, and maintaining the director's creative vision throughout post-production. Supervisors had to ensure that all digital elements matched the practical footage seamlessly. For example, if Dwayne Johnson performed on a physical set with partial fire effects, the digital artists later needed to expand the environment while preserving realistic lighting and movement. Every digital addition had to blend naturally with the live-action footage. One of the movie's most famous scenes involves Johnson's character leaping from a construction crane toward the Pearl. This moment became central to the film's marketing campaign because it visually represented the movie's themes of danger, survival, and impossible odds. Creating this sequence required a combination of stunt work, wire rigs, practical filming, digital city environments, and computer-generated tower extensions. The scene works because the visual effects create believable scale and motion. Audiences feel the terrifying height difference between the crane and the tower. Wind effects, lighting, camera movement, and environmental detail all contribute to the intensity of the moment. The movie also relied heavily on digital destruction. As the story progresses, sections of the Pearl become damaged by explosions and fire. Visual effects artists needed to simulate breaking glass, collapsing structures, burning interiors, and debris falling from extreme heights. Destruction in visual effects requires careful physics simulation because audiences instinctively recognize unrealistic movement or behavior. The filmmakers wanted the destruction to feel grounded in engineering reality rather than exaggerated fantasy. Since the Pearl was originally designed with consultation from real architects, its damage also needed to reflect believable structural behavior. This realism made the action more immersive. Lighting represented another crucial element of the visual effects process. The Pearl contains countless illuminated surfaces, glowing panels, reflective windows, and futuristic displays. During nighttime scenes, the building almost resembles a giant living machine glowing above Hong Kong. Visual effects artists carefully designed these lighting systems to create mood, visual beauty, and dramatic contrast against the darkness and fire. Color also played an important role in shaping the film's atmosphere. Cool blue and white tones often represented the tower's technological sophistication, while orange and red tones symbolized destruction and chaos. This contrast visually reinforced the conflict between human innovation and catastrophic danger. Ultimately, the filming and visual effects production of Skyscraper demonstrate how modern blockbuster cinema depends on the fusion of practical filmmaking and digital artistry. The movie required real actors, physical sets, location photography, stunt coordination, architectural research, and massive computer-generated enhancements working together seamlessly. Without the visual effects teams, the Pearl could never have existed on screen in such convincing detail. At the same time, without practical performances and real filming locations, the movie might have felt emotionally empty or artificial. The success of the production came from balancing realism with spectacle. The filmmakers aimed to create an experience where audiences could believe, at least for a moment, that humanity might someday build a tower like the Pearl, and that such a marvel could become both a symbol of progress and a terrifying trap. Through its combination of real-world filming and cutting-edge visual effects, Skyscraper transformed a fictional skyscraper into a cinematic world that felt massive, dangerous, and astonishingly real. The music and marketing of Skyscraper, 2018, played a crucial role in shaping the film's identity as a modern action spectacle. While the movie itself focused on survival, family, danger, and massive architectural destruction, the soundtrack and promotional campaign helped create the emotional intensity and cinematic excitement that surrounded the film before and after its release. Music gave emotional power to the story's tension and heroism, while marketing introduced audiences to the scale, atmosphere, and style of the movie long before they entered theaters. Together, these elements transformed Skyscraper from a standard action film into a global blockbuster event designed to attract viewers through both emotional energy and visual spectacle. One of the most important creative forces behind the movie's emotional atmosphere was composer Steve Jablonsky. Jablonsky is widely known for composing music for large-scale action and science fiction films, especially movies involving intense emotion, explosive visuals, and heroic themes. His musical style often combines powerful orchestral arrangements with electronic elements, creating soundtracks that feel modern, dramatic, and cinematic at the same time. This made him an ideal choice for Skyscraper, a film that blends emotional family drama with futuristic technology and large-scale disaster action. The score for Skyscraper was built using a mixture of guitars, synthesized drums, and traditional orchestra. This combination was extremely important because it reflected the movie's balance between humanity and technology. The orchestra brought emotional depth, tension, and epic scale to the story. Orchestral music has long been associated with cinematic grandeur because strings, brass, percussion, and woodwinds can create feelings of heroism, suspense, tragedy, and triumph in ways that deeply affect audiences emotionally. At the same time, the synthesized drums and electronic elements gave the soundtrack a modern and technological atmosphere. Since the movie takes place inside one of the world's most advanced skyscrapers, futuristic sounds helped reinforce the high-tech environment of the Pearl. Electronic rhythms and digital textures also intensified the pacing during action sequences, helping scenes feel fast, urgent, and dangerous. The use of guitars added another emotional layer. Guitars often create feelings of determination, grit, and personal struggle. In Skyscraper, the story is not simply about explosions and destruction. At its core, it is about a father risking everything to save his family. The guitar elements likely helped emphasize the personal and emotional side of Will Sawyer's journey, reminding audiences that beneath the giant action scenes was a vulnerable human being fighting against impossible odds. Film music is often invisible to viewers in the sense that audiences may not consciously analyze it while watching, yet it strongly shapes emotional reactions. In Skyscraper, the score had to perform several functions simultaneously. During suspense scenes, it needed to build anxiety and tension. During emotional family moments, it needed to create warmth and emotional connection. During large action sequences, it had to generate excitement and adrenaline. Balancing these emotional tones is one of the biggest challenges for any action movie composer. The Pearl itself also influenced the style of the soundtrack. Because the building represented futuristic innovation and massive scale, the music needed to feel equally grand and technologically advanced. The towering height of the skyscraper, the glowing cityscape, and the catastrophic fire sequences required music capable of matching the visual spectacle. Large orchestral arrangements helped communicate this enormous scale. At the same time, the score could not become emotionally empty or purely mechanical. Many modern action films risk overwhelming audiences with non-stop noise and intensity without emotional grounding. Steve Jablonsky's challenge was ensuring that the audience remained emotionally connected to the characters while still experiencing the thrill of the movie's spectacle. The soundtrack was digitally released on July 13, 2018, the same period as the film's theatrical release. Digital soundtrack releases have become increasingly important in modern cinema because streaming platforms allow audiences to experience film music immediately after watching a movie. Fans often revisit soundtracks to relive emotional moments or memorable scenes. Releasing the music digitally also helped extend the movie's promotional presence beyond theaters. A physical version of the soundtrack was later released on August 3, 2018. Although digital music dominates the modern industry, physical soundtrack albums still hold importance for collectors and dedicated film music fans. Physical releases can give movie soundtracks a sense of permanence and artistic identity beyond the film itself. The emotional conclusion of Skyscraper was further strengthened by the song Walls, performed by British singer and songwriter Jamie N. Commons. End-credit songs often play a very important role in action films because they help audiences emotionally transition out of the movie's intense climax. After experiencing explosions, danger, emotional tension, and dramatic rescue sequences, viewers are left with the final emotional impression created by the closing music. Jamie N. Commons is known for his powerful, soulful voice and emotionally intense musical style. His music often combines elements of rock, blues, and cinematic drama, making his voice particularly suitable for action films focused on resilience and emotional struggle. Walls likely complemented the themes of survival, courage, family protection, and perseverance that define Skyscraper. The title, Walls, itself carries symbolic meaning within the context of the film. Walls are central to the story because the movie revolves around a massive structure designed to protect and contain people. Yet the walls of the Pearl also become traps during the disaster. Symbolically, walls can represent safety, barriers, emotional strength, or isolation. The song's placement during the end credits likely encouraged audiences to reflect emotionally on the journey the characters experienced. Music in blockbuster cinema also serves an important marketing function. A strong soundtrack can increase a movie's emotional memorability and expand its cultural reach. When audiences associate certain musical themes or songs with dramatic scenes, the emotional power of those scenes becomes stronger in memory. This is especially true in action films where music and visuals work together to create adrenaline and suspense. Beyond the music itself, the marketing campaign for Skyscraper played a major role in shaping public anticipation for the film. Universal Pictures launched the promotional campaign with the release of the first official trailer in February 2018. Movie trailers are among the most important marketing tools in modern filmmaking because they provide audiences with their first major impression of a film's tone, story, and spectacle. The first trailer needed to accomplish several objectives at once. First, it had to establish the basic premise clearly. Audiences needed to understand that the movie centered on a gigantic skyscraper disaster involving fire, danger, and rescue. Second, the trailer needed to showcase Dwayne Johnson's star power because he was one of the movie's biggest attractions. Third, it needed to emphasize the scale and uniqueness of the Pearl itself. One of the most memorable aspects of the marketing campaign was the famous shot of Johnson's character leaping from a crane toward the burning skyscraper. This image became iconic almost immediately because it visually communicated the movie's central concept in a single moment. The leap symbolized desperation, courage, impossible odds, and extreme danger all at once. Interestingly, audiences online began heavily discussing the realism of the jump after the trailer's release. Some viewers analyzed whether the leap was physically possible, creating widespread internet conversations and memes. Rather than harming the movie's publicity, this discussion actually increased public awareness and curiosity. The image became instantly recognizable and helped the film stand out in a crowded blockbuster market. The second trailer, released on May 23, 2018, expanded the emotional and narrative elements of the story. While the first trailer focused heavily on spectacle and action, later promotional material emphasized the family aspect of the plot. This was important because the filmmakers wanted audiences to understand that Skyscraper was not just about destruction. The emotional motivation behind the action was a father trying to rescue his wife and children. This emotional focus helped separate Skyscraper from purely spectacle-driven disaster films. By highlighting family relationships and personal sacrifice, the marketing campaign aimed to make the movie feel emotionally engaging rather than visually empty. The trailers also showcased the futuristic design of the Pearl. The glowing observation sphere, massive glass structures, advanced technology, and towering scale all contributed to the movie's visual identity. The marketing emphasized the idea that audiences would witness something larger and more technologically ambitious than an ordinary skyscraper movie. Another fascinating aspect of the marketing campaign involved promotional posters inspired by classic action and disaster films such as The Towering Inferno, 1974, and Die Hard, 1988. These references were highly intentional because Skyscraper shares thematic and stylistic similarities with both movies. The Towering Inferno is one of the most famous disaster films ever made, focusing on a catastrophic fire inside a massive skyscraper. By referencing this classic film, the Skyscraper marketing connected itself to the long tradition of large-scale disaster cinema. This suggested to audiences that the movie would deliver suspense, spectacle, and towering destruction similar to classic Hollywood disaster epics. At the same time, the references to Die Hard highlighted the movie's action thriller elements. Die Hard is widely considered one of the greatest action films ever made, featuring a lone hero trapped inside a skyscraper while battling dangerous enemies. Skyscraper shares many structural similarities with this formula, including a single determined protagonist navigating a hostile high-rise environment to save innocent people. By visually referencing these iconic films, the marketing campaign cleverly positioned Skyscraper within recognizable cinematic traditions. Audiences familiar with action and disaster cinema could immediately understand the type of experience the movie aimed to deliver. However, the campaign also emphasized the futuristic scale and technological uniqueness of the Pearl to show that Skyscraper was attempting to modernize those classic influences. The posters themselves used dramatic visual design to emphasize danger and scale. Huge flames, glowing city lights, towering heights, and isolated human figures reinforced the feeling that the movie involved survival against overwhelming odds. Dwayne Johnson was often positioned as a lone heroic figure confronting impossible situations, strengthening the film's image as a high-intensity action thriller. Marketing for modern blockbusters is often as carefully designed as the movies themselves. Studios spend enormous amounts of money creating campaigns capable of generating excitement across international audiences. In the case of Skyscraper, the marketing needed to sell not only Dwayne Johnson's heroic performance but also the Pearl as a cinematic spectacle audiences had never seen before. The campaign balanced multiple emotional tones. It highlighted thrilling action for audiences seeking excitement, emotional family drama for viewers wanting personal stakes, and futuristic visual design for fans of science fiction and technological imagination. This broad appeal was essential because modern blockbusters rely heavily on attracting diverse global audiences. Ultimately, the music and marketing of Skyscraper worked together to create the film's larger identity. Steve Jablonsky's emotionally powerful score gave the story dramatic energy and emotional weight, while Jamie N. Common's ending song reinforced the movie's themes of resilience and survival. Meanwhile, Universal's marketing campaign transformed the movie into a recognizable blockbuster event centered around impossible heights, catastrophic danger, and heroic determination. Together, these elements helped audiences emotionally connect with the spectacle of the Pearl while preparing them for a cinematic experience that combined classic disaster movie traditions with modern visual effects and contemporary action filmmaking. The theatrical and home media release of Skyscraper, 2018, represented the final stage in transforming the film from a massive production project into a worldwide entertainment event. By the time the movie reached audiences, years of planning, filming, visual effects work, marketing campaigns, and international promotional efforts had already shaped the movie's identity as a large-scale modern action thriller. The release strategy reflected not only the importance of Dwayne Johnson's global star power but also Hollywood's increasing focus on international audiences, especially China, which had become one of the world's most important movie markets. The theatrical rollout, international premieres, and later home media release all demonstrated how blockbuster films in the modern era are carefully designed to maximize worldwide visibility, audience engagement, and long-term commercial success. Skyscraper was officially released in the United States on July 13, 2018, by Universal Pictures. This release date was extremely important because July is one of the biggest months in the Hollywood film calendar. Summer movie season has traditionally been the most competitive and profitable period for blockbuster entertainment. Studios often reserve July releases for films they believe can attract large audiences through action, spectacle, visual effects, and mainstream appeal. By placing Skyscraper in the middle of summer, Universal Pictures positioned the movie as a major action event designed for wide theatrical attendance. Summer audiences often seek large-scale cinematic experiences featuring excitement, visual intensity, and escapism. Skyscraper fit perfectly within this tradition because it combined disaster movie elements, futuristic architecture, family drama, and high-risk action sequences centered around one of the tallest fictional buildings ever shown in cinema. The release strategy also reflected confidence in Dwayne Johnson's popularity. By 2018, Johnson had become one of the most recognizable actors in the world. His movies consistently performed well internationally because his screen image combined physical strength, charisma, humor, determination, and emotional accessibility. Audiences viewed him as a reliable action hero capable of leading family-friendly blockbuster entertainment. Releasing Skyscraper during the peak summer season allowed the studio to capitalize on Johnson's enormous global fan base. The movie's release timing also highlighted the competitive nature of blockbuster filmmaking. Summer releases must compete against numerous other major productions. Studios carefully analyze audience trends, school vacation periods, international markets, and competing films before selecting release dates. A summer release signals that a studio believes a film has enough appeal and marketing strength to survive in a crowded entertainment environment. One of the most fascinating aspects of Skyscraper's theatrical release involved its distribution in China. The movie secured a Chinese release date of July 20, 2018, only 1 week after its American release. This was particularly significant because mainstream Hollywood films are rarely released in China during July. The Chinese film market often reserves this period for domestic productions in order to support the local film industry and encourage audiences to watch Chinese-made movies instead of foreign imports. Because of this, Skyscraper receiving a July Chinese release represented an unusual achievement. It demonstrated the film's strong international appeal and the confidence distributors had in its ability to attract Chinese audiences. This decision also reflected the movie's deliberate connection to Chinese settings, architectural symbolism, and Asian urban imagery. The Pearl, the fictional skyscraper at the center of the movie, was heavily inspired by Chinese mythology and futuristic Asian architecture. The building's design incorporated dragon imagery and symbolic cultural influences connected to Chinese traditions. Additionally, the movie was set in Hong Kong, one of the most visually recognizable cities in Asia. These creative choices were not accidental. Hollywood increasingly understood that international audiences wanted to see their cultures, cities, and influences represented in global blockbuster cinema. The Chinese release was financially important because China had become one of the largest box office markets in the world by 2018. For many Hollywood films, Chinese earnings could dramatically affect overall financial performance. Studios therefore invested heavily in creating movies capable of appealing to Chinese audiences through casting, settings, themes, and marketing strategies. The fact that Skyscraper secured a July release in China also showed the growing relationship between Hollywood and the Chinese entertainment market. During the 2010s, many major Hollywood productions sought closer connections with Chinese investors, distributors, and audiences. Action movies with large visual spectacle often performed especially well in China because their storytelling relied heavily on universal cinematic elements such as danger, heroism, family, and survival rather than culturally specific dialogue or humor. Before its general theatrical release, Skyscraper held important premiere events designed to build excitement and generate media attention. The movie premiered in Beijing on July 2, 2018. Premieres are crucial promotional events because they create publicity, attract journalists, encourage social media discussion, and reinforce a movie's status as a major cinematic event. Holding the premiere in Beijing rather than exclusively in Hollywood revealed how internationally focused the movie's promotional strategy had become. It signaled respect toward Chinese audiences and emphasized the importance of the Asian market to the film's commercial ambitions. Premieres often include appearances by actors, directors, producers, and other key members of the production team. These events help create direct engagement between the filmmakers and local audiences. A Beijing premiere also reinforced the movie's connection to Asian urban imagery and architectural inspiration. Since The Pearl was inspired partly by Chinese mythology and futuristic city design, launching the film in China helped strengthen the emotional and cultural relationship between the movie and its intended international audience. The film also held a screening in Hong Kong on July 7, 2018. This event carried especially symbolic importance because Hong Kong serves as the primary setting for the story. Hong Kong is famous worldwide for its dramatic skyline filled with towering skyscrapers, dense urban architecture, neon lighting, and harbor scenery. The city itself almost functions like a character in Skyscraper because its urban environment shapes the movie's visual identity. Screening the film in Hong Kong connected the fictional events of the movie to the real city that inspired much of its atmosphere. Audiences in Hong Kong could recognize architectural influences, cityscapes, and visual elements reflected throughout the film. This created a stronger sense of realism and local connection. The Hong Kong screening also highlighted how modern blockbuster cinema increasingly operates on a global scale. In earlier decades, Hollywood premieres primarily focused on American cities like Los Angeles or New York. By contrast, films like Skyscraper treated international locations as equally important centers for promotion and audience engagement. The theatrical experience itself was central to how Skyscraper was intended to be viewed. The movie's enormous scale, towering visuals, explosive action scenes, and intense sound design were specifically crafted for large cinema screens and surround sound systems. Modern action blockbusters depend heavily on immersive theatrical presentation. Watching the Pearl Tower over a city skyline or witnessing massive fire sequences on a giant screen creates a far stronger emotional impact than smaller viewing formats. The movie's visual style emphasized height, scale, and danger in ways designed to overwhelm audiences inside theaters. Many scenes use vertical cinematography, wide city views, and dramatic perspective shots to create feelings of dizziness and suspense. The theatrical environment amplified these sensations. Sound also played a major role in the theatrical experience. Steve Jablonsky's score, combined with explosive sound effects, roaring fire, collapsing structures, and environmental noise, surrounded audiences in ways impossible to fully replicate outside cinemas. The deep bass and powerful audio systems of theaters enhanced the movie's tension and excitement. After its theatrical run, Skyscraper entered the home media phase of distribution, which represented another crucial part of the movie's commercial life. The film was digitally released on September 25, 2018. Digital distribution had become increasingly dominant by this period because audiences were rapidly shifting toward streaming platforms, digital purchases, and on-demand viewing. The digital release allowed viewers to watch the film from home only a few months after its theatrical debut. This relatively short gap reflected changing audience expectations in the modern entertainment industry. Earlier generations often waited much longer for films to reach home viewing formats, but digital technology accelerated the distribution process significantly. Digital releases are extremely important because they allow movies to continue generating revenue long after leaving theaters. Many viewers who skip theatrical screenings later watch films through digital rentals or purchases. Digital platforms also expand accessibility by allowing audiences worldwide to access movies instantly. The digital release of Skyscraper helped maintain public interest in the movie following its theatrical marketing campaign. Fans who enjoyed the film in theaters could re-watch it at home, while new audiences could discover it for the first time. Action movies often perform well in home entertainment because viewers enjoy revisiting large spectacle sequences and intense suspense scenes. On October 2, 2018, the film received physical home media releases on Blu-ray, DVD, Blu-ray 3D, and Ultra HD Blu-ray through Universal Pictures Home Entertainment. These multiple formats reflected the changing technological landscape of home entertainment. DVD remained important because it was still widely accessible and affordable for many audiences around the world. Blu-ray provided higher image and sound quality, appealing to viewers seeking a more cinematic home experience. Ultra HD Blu-ray offered even greater visual detail, improved color range, and enhanced sound quality, making it particularly suitable for visually ambitious films like Skyscraper. The release of a Blu-ray 3D version was especially interesting because the movie's visual design strongly emphasized depth, height, and spatial danger. The Pearl's towering scale and the movie's vertigo-inducing action sequences naturally suited 3D presentation. Scenes involving glass floors, collapsing structures, and extreme heights could become even more immersive when viewed in 3 dimensions. Home media releases often include bonus features such as behind-the-scenes documentaries, deleted scenes, visual effects breakdowns, interviews, and production commentary. These materials allow audiences to better understand the enormous technical effort involved in creating a blockbuster like Skyscraper. Viewers can see how practical sets, stunt work, and digital effects combine to create the illusion of the Pearl and its catastrophic destruction. The home media phase also extends the cultural lifespan of a movie. Theatrical runs are temporary, but home releases allow films to remain accessible for years. Fans can revisit favorite scenes, study production details, and introduce the movie to new viewers long after the original release. The release pattern of Skyscraper reflects broader changes in modern blockbuster filmmaking. Movies are no longer treated as single theatrical events but as long-term multimedia products moving through multiple stages of distribution. Theatrical release builds excitement and visibility, digital release expands accessibility, and physical media preserves the movie for collectors and dedicated fans. The international focus of the release strategy also reveals how globalized modern cinema had become by 2018. Skyscraper was designed not only for American audiences but for viewers around the world. Its themes of family survival, courage, technological ambition, and disaster transcend language and cultural boundaries, allowing it to connect with international audiences through visual storytelling and universal emotions. Ultimately, the theatrical and home media release of Skyscraper completed the movie's transformation from a production project into a worldwide entertainment experience. From its summer theatrical launch and international premieres to its digital and physical home releases, every stage of distribution reflected the movie's identity as a modern global blockbuster built around spectacle, emotion, technology, and the enduring appeal of heroic survival against impossible odds. The box office reception of Skyscraper, 2018, provides a fascinating look at how modern blockbuster films succeed, struggle, and compete within the global entertainment industry. Although the movie featured one of the world's biggest action stars, impressive visual effects, large-scale action sequences, and an international marketing campaign, its financial performance reflected both the strengths and challenges of blockbuster filmmaking during the late 2010s. The movie's reception demonstrated the growing importance of international audiences, the intense competition of summer movie season, changing audience expectations for action films, and the enormous influence of global stars like Dwayne Johnson. Skyscraper ultimately earned approximately $68.4 million in the United States and Canada and an additional $236.4 million from international markets, bringing its worldwide total to around $304.9 million. Against a production budget of roughly $125 million, these numbers represented a financially respectable performance, though not necessarily an overwhelming blockbuster triumph by Hollywood standards. To fully understand the significance of these numbers, it is important to examine how modern blockbuster economics work and why global box office performance matters so much. A movie's production budget only tells part of the financial story. In addition to production costs, major Hollywood films also require enormous marketing expenditures. Advertising campaigns for blockbuster films often cost tens of millions of dollars, including television commercials, trailers, posters, international premieres, online promotion, and merchandising partnerships. Therefore, a film generally needs to earn significantly more than its production budget in theaters before becoming highly profitable. However, worldwide earnings are especially important because studios do not rely solely on domestic audiences anymore. By 2018, the international box office had become essential to blockbuster filmmaking. In many cases, foreign audiences contributed more revenue than North American viewers. Skyscraper followed this trend very clearly because most of its earnings came from overseas markets rather than the United States and Canada. The movie's performance showed how Hollywood action films increasingly depend on global appeal. Themes like survival, heroism, family protection, danger, and spectacle can connect with audiences regardless of language or culture. Action sequences, visual effects, and emotional storytelling often translate internationally more easily than dialogue-heavy comedies or culturally specific dramas. Skyscraper was specifically designed with this international accessibility in mind. In the United States and Canada, Skyscraper faced a difficult theatrical environment from the beginning. The movie opened alongside Hotel Transylvania 3, Summer Vacation, a major animated family film, as well as the expanding release of Sorry to Bother You, which attracted a different audience interested in socially conscious comedy and satire. At the same time, Ant-Man and the Wasp, another major studio release from Marvel Studios, was already performing strongly in theaters. This crowded competition highlights one of the biggest challenges of summer blockbuster season. During summer months, studios release many large-scale films within a short period of time. Audiences may become selective about which movies they prioritize because ticket prices, time, and attention are limited. Even movies with major stars and expensive marketing campaigns can struggle when competing against multiple high-profile releases simultaneously. Initially, industry analysts projected that Skyscraper would earn between $32 million and $40 million during its opening weekend from 3,782 theaters in North America. These projections reflected confidence in Dwayne Johnson's popularity and the movie's broad mainstream appeal. Johnson had already established himself as one of the most reliable box office draws in Hollywood, especially in action films. However, early signs suggested the movie might underperform relative to expectations. During Thursday night preview screenings, Skyscraper earned approximately $1.95 million. While this was still a solid figure, it fell below the Thursday preview earnings of Johnson's earlier film Rampage, which had earned around $2.4 million earlier that year. Industry observers often use Thursday previews as an indicator of opening weekend momentum because they reflect early audience enthusiasm. When the film earned $9.3 million on its first official day, weekend estimates were lowered significantly. Instead of reaching the earlier projections, the movie ultimately debuted with approximately $24.9 million during its opening weekend. This result placed the film in third position at the domestic box office, behind Hotel Transylvania 3, Summer Vacation and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Although a third-place opening may sound disappointing for a major action film, the results still reflected substantial audience interest. However, because of the movie's large budget and star-driven marketing campaign, analysts expected stronger domestic numbers. This led many entertainment industry observers to debate why the movie opened below expectations. One major explanation involved the familiarity of the movie's concept. Critics and industry analysts noted that Skyscraper resembled earlier action and disaster films such as Die Hard and The Towering Inferno. While the movie modernized these influences through futuristic visuals and updated technology, many viewers may have felt they had already seen similar stories before. This issue reflects a larger challenge in blockbuster filmmaking. Modern audiences are constantly exposed to sequels, remakes, superhero films, disaster movies, and action spectacles. As a result, originality becomes increasingly important. Even visually impressive films can struggle if audiences perceive them as too similar to previous movies. Another major factor was the timing of the release. July is one of the most competitive months in Hollywood because numerous studios release major productions during the summer season. Audiences may become overwhelmed by choices, and some films inevitably lose momentum in the crowded marketplace. The summer of 2018 was especially competitive because several major franchises and highly marketed films were already dominating theaters. Ant-Man and the Wasp belong to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, one of the most powerful franchises in modern entertainment. Family audiences were strongly attracted to Hotel Transylvania 3, which appealed to parents and children during school vacation season. In such an environment, Skyscraper faced significant pressure despite its impressive production values. Another interesting argument raised by industry observers involved Dwayne Johnson himself. By 2018, Johnson was appearing in movies very frequently. While his popularity remained enormous, some analysts suggested that audiences might have experienced a degree of star saturation. In other words, viewers may have become so accustomed to seeing Johnson in theaters that individual films felt less like special events. This idea reveals an interesting aspect of modern celebrity culture. Major stars can attract audiences through familiarity and charisma, but excessive visibility can sometimes reduce the sense of novelty surrounding their projects. However, despite these concerns, audience surveys still showed that Johnson remained the primary reason many people attended Skyscraper. Reports indicated that approximately 72% of ticket buyers specifically cited him as their motivation for watching the movie. This statistic demonstrates Johnson's extraordinary influence as a global movie star. Even when a film faced mixed expectations or heavy competition, his presence alone remained a major commercial advantage. His combination of physicality, humor, emotional sincerity, and approachable personality continued to resonate strongly with mainstream audiences. After its opening weekend, Skyscraper experienced the normal decline typical of many action blockbusters. In its second weekend, the film earned approximately $11.4 million and dropped to sixth place at the box office. By its third weekend, it earned about $5.4 million and fell to ninth place. These declines reflected both competition and audience behavior. Big-budget action films often rely heavily on opening weekend performance because audiences eager to see the spectacle tend to attend quickly. Sustained success usually depends on strong word-of-mouth, repeat viewings, or limited competition. However, the international box office dramatically strengthened Skyscraper's overall financial performance. The movie performed particularly well in China, where it debuted with approximately $47.7 million. This was an extremely important achievement because it showed the film's strong connection with Chinese audiences. The Chinese opening immediately placed Skyscraper at number 1 in the country's box office rankings. This success reinforced how crucial international markets had become for Hollywood action films. In fact, the Chinese debut helped bring the movie's 2-week foreign earnings total to approximately $132.8 million, demonstrating that overseas audiences were driving the film's financial momentum. China's positive response to Skyscraper was not accidental. The movie had clearly been designed with international appeal in mind. Its Hong Kong setting, Asian-inspired architecture, futuristic urban imagery, and globally recognizable themes all contributed to its